From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. Today was the fourth legislative day of the 2025 regular session as the House and Senate continued a relatively fast pace here at the gate. We'll start in the Senate, where a bill meant to overhaul and elevate the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs was on the floor. The bill from State Senator Andrew Jones would revamp the department to make its commissioner a member of the governor's cabinet. It would also make the State Board of Veterans Affairs, which now has direct authority over personnel and policy, to a more advisory role. The legislation stemmed from the interagency dust-up over the inappropriate use of ARPA funds that eventually led to the dismissal of the commissioner last year. Several veterans organizations have been calling on senators not to go that far and restore the board membership under the bill. That culminated last night in Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth coming out against the bill, which Jones addressed today.
Well, he's a good friend, and obviously the Lieutenant Governor chairs the Military Stability Commission. You saw an amendment today that put a couple of different seats on the board from the Lieutenant Governor, appointed by the Lieutenant Governor. So I can't speak for him. You'll have to ask him, but I'm hopeful that given the overwhelming response, the feedback, the stakeholder input that we had today, I'm hopeful that everybody will be excited about moving forward in a unified front.
This entity has remained in obscurity, and this is an effort to bring it out of obscurity and into the operations of state government.
It gives them notice. It also says that we will accept 3 recommendations to fill that position, and that we will give them primary consideration in appointing that new board member.
Challenges with this bill that's concerning to me. But on the positive, because I'm trying to be that person now, on the positive, some of them came down today. They did inform me that they got some great reception, that people were willing to have conversations. And I think that's the place that we need to be, that folks need to, our folks, our servicemen and women, again, these people that have, put their bodies in harm's way.
And although there was a little sausage making and things might not have fit and things had to be reworked, and we finally got there. So given the fact that it's all in there and together, we've taken some feedback, we've had some discussions, we've heard a lot from our veterans communities about what's important to them.
After accepting several amendments today, Senator Jones requested that the bill be carried over to allow lawmakers, the public, and veterans groups more time to review the changes. He plans on bringing it back for a vote next week, and I'll actually speak in more detail with Senator Jones about this issue later in the show. We reported last week on the What is a Woman Act passing the Senate after an intense debate about gender roles and the appropriateness of state involvement. Today, it was the House's turn to debate that legislation, starting in committee. Senate Bill 79 would define in state law sex-based terms like male, female, man, woman, mother, and father, based on biology. It is being carried in the House by State Representative Susan DuBose, who said the bill simply acknowledges biological reality, while opponents argued that it's actually discriminatory.
I wish I didn't have to be here today. I wish we didn't need to define what a man is or a woman is, but we do. When you have a Supreme Court justice who could not define what a woman is, despite being one herself, looks like we're going to have to codify this into Alabama law.
This bill defines female as an individual who has had, will have, or would have, but for a developmental anomaly, genetic anomaly, or accident, the reproductive system that at some point produces ova. And that includes me. Do you want to walk into the women's bathroom and see me? Do you want your daughters to do that?
The bill advanced through committee and now goes to the House floor. The full House debated House Bill 49 from Representative Matt Simpson, which would make those convicted of child rape eligible for the death penalty. Simpson is a former prosecutor who used to work child rape cases and says life in prison does not go far enough for those offenders.
This bill would change the potential punishment for if someone commits the offense of rape or sodomy on a child under the age of There will be an amendment that was passed on committee to move it to under the age of 12. Then it would allow the prosecution to pursue the death penalty in those cases.
Aren't we a pro-life state?
We are.
Well, why are you going to execute folks?
Because you can, you want me to answer that?
So you can't be pro-life and death. You can't be pro-life and killing people.
You absolutely can.
That bill passed the House 86-5 with 9 members abstaining. It now goes to the Senate. There was also committee action in the Senate today. The County and Municipal Government Committee met this afternoon to take up legislation, including a bill intended to reduce the runaround for businesses attempting to obtain various state and local licenses. Senate Bill 12 is sponsored by State Senator Chris Elliott.
What it does is it says, hey, you can't condition the issuance of your permit on the issuance of another agency's permit. Because what happens is when you start stacking these things on top of each other, what was a 2, 3, 5 week month period becomes a 10-week month, a 20-week month. You've killed the business before it ever started because you stacked these things on top of each other. Now, I have not reduced the 40 some odd permits or whatever at all. I have not in this bill taken away any bureaucrat's authority to do or say or regulate. I've just said, you do you, boo. You stay in your area, okay? You stay in your area. You enforce your regulations, okay? You look at what you've got that you regulate and stay in your lane.
And that bill passed committee and will now go to the full Senate. Okay, coming up after the break, I'll be joined by State Senator Andrew Jones to talk more about that Veterans Affairs legislation. After that, State Representative Leigh Hulsey joins me to talk about her bill banning smartphones in schools and a push to require proper reading instruction. Stay with us.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Amelia Boynton Robinson was a leading civil rights activist who played a key role in the efforts that led to passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act and was the first African-American woman in Alabama to run for Congress. In 1933, Robinson and Reverend Frederick Reese founded the Dallas County Voters League. In 1964, they invited Martin Luther King Jr. to Selma to help secure the right to vote for African Americans. The following year, Robinson helped plan and lead the failed march from Selma to Montgomery that came to be known as Bloody Sunday. On March 7, 1965, she and approximately 600 marchers were met by police and Alabama state troopers with tear gas and billy clubs at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. When the Voting Rights Act was signed into law August 6, 1965, President Lyndon Johnson invited Robinson to attend as a guest of honor. In 1990, Robinson received the Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Medal in honor of her life's work for the advancement of human rights.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is State Senator Andrew Jones. Senator, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Todd. Great to be with you again.
You've had a long day on the floor. It was your bill that was the marquee bill on the floor today, having to do with overhauling, updating, elevating, we've used that word, the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. Many of your colleagues came with amendments, so can you kind of walk me through? Most of them I guess you saw as friendly.
Right.
So walk me through what all happened on the floor today.
Sure. Well, this was just part of the legislative process. Folks hearing from their constituents, hearing from different veterans organizations around the state, bringing forward those amendments and changes, tweaks to the bill. That's part of the buy-in that comes with bringing a bill and working it through the legislative process. So all the amendments were friendly and was very glad because I think they strengthened and improved the bill.
Okay. What is the next step? So you carried it over, talked about folks could marinate on it. Do you foresee it coming back next week?
I think so. Of course, obviously that's up to the rules chairman and the pro tem, but I think that we'll be in a place where folks have a better understanding of what's going on in the legislation. You know, there were a number of changes. The board's now at 15 members instead of the 9 that were originally in the bill. About 7 different amendments came today. So I think we just want to give folks the time to be comfortable with it, to hear from their constituents, to get some feedback from these veterans groups and make sure everyone's comfortable before we move forward. And frankly, Todd, there's been a lot of misinformation out there about the motives behind this, what the bill does, what the bill doesn't do. And so I think that will allow us some time to kind of clear the air and clear up some of those misconceptions that have been going around.
I agree. I've seen a lot of that myself. And it was last night, kind of late last night, when the lieutenant governor shook things up, because he doesn't get involved in every issue, but he sent out a press release basically opposing the bill. He said, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Of course, we've come a long way in this whole saga with the Department of Veterans Affairs and its board. So did that interrupt the process at all? Did that get some conversation started in terms of what changes he wanted to see to the bill?
Well, Lieutenant Governor's a friend, and we talked last night before, you know, when he came out against the legislation. I'd be curious to talk with him again now that we've had some amendments and some changes to see where he is. Obviously, there was an amendment added today that gives the Lieutenant Governor's position 2 appointments to put on the board. So I'm not sure whether that moves the needle for him or not, but obviously we've heard from a lot of different folks, a lot of different feedback, a lot of different buy-in. It's a different bill than we had before, and so I think folks are going to take another look, and I would encourage him as a friend to do that.
Mm-hmm. A lot of this comes down to the board, right? We're talking about elevating the commissioner to a cabinet level position. Not a lot of disagreement about that in terms of the appropriate kind of way government works. But you start moving around the board and moving around folks that have been on the board or had certain number of seats, certain organizations have certain number of seats. I'm not really surprised that folks get upset about that because they've sort of come to expect a certain authority and role on the board. So that's kind of what went through today. But I'm curious because I know that there have to be some still that are unsatisfied in terms of amendments not going far enough. Some want to kind of go back to the way it has been in terms of the board being in charge, having hiring and firing and policy making instead of the governor. And so do you foresee amendments coming like that? At the end of the day, do you foresee that your plan to make it an advisory board rather than an authoritative board coming through, or do you see some amendments succeeding that would kind of keep it as it is?
Well, I haven't really heard any talk from colleagues about moving back to the way the board is now, meaning a full regulatory board. You know, we have this model in state government where we have about 12 different boards and agencies, commissions, such as mental health, conservation and natural resources, the banking commission, that operate on the same model that we have in the bill. Now, I have heard some discussion about perhaps moving from an advisory board to maybe a board with some slight oversight on certain different items, but I don't think the Senate as a whole would have the mood to go back to the current structure that exists today. So I think most members are comfortable with a board that's an advisory board in nature, maybe a little bit of oversight in there, a cabinet level commissioner, and kind of operating the same way as a dozen or so agencies and boards do already.
Mm-hmm. And look, we're not looking at another ARPA, right? That's probably a generational thing that's not going to happen again. But do you think if this bill can get through, elevate that position to cabinet, does it increase the communication between agencies like finance, like mental health? We saw so much miscommunication between those 3 organizations. Does it help maybe increase communication, have some more structure, and lead to a more effective department? Because the whole point is to make it work for veterans.
All of those things. I think it does all of those things. It elevates the board, the position. You know, there's a reason that only 6 states operate in the manner that Alabama operates now. Everyone else has moved to some model where the buck stops with the governor. And that's ultimately, someone has to be in charge. The buck has to stop somewhere. And having the full resources to bear of state government, the governor's office, having the ear of the governor, is only a great thing in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, the House is going to start its process tomorrow in committee. So this is the issue to watch for now in the legislature. Senator, I know it was a long day. Thanks again for your time.
Sure thing. Great to be with you, Todd.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Alabama Public Television is your place for quality educational services. Free professional development for educators and child care providers. Access to free curriculum-aligned videos, lesson plans, and instructional resources with PBS Learning Media. And all the PBS Kids programs parents know and trust. Learn something new every day with Alabama Public Television. Visit us at aptv.org/education to learn more.
The 16th Street Baptist Church was the first house of worship for African Americans in Birmingham. Throughout the 1960s, the church was a center of black activism and a staging ground for the civil rights movement. On September 15, 1963, it was the target of a racially motivated bombing that killed 4 little girls: Denise McNair, Addie Mae Collins, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley. The bombing tragedy outraged the nation and contributed to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Today, the church is a fixture of the Civil Rights District of Birmingham and serves as a monument to the community. In 2013, the murdered children were awarded the United States' highest civilian honor, the Congressional Gold Medal. And in 2017, President Obama signed legislation declaring the church and the surrounding area the Birmingham Civil Rights National Monument.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is State Representative Leigh Hulsey from Shelby County. Representative, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, you've got a key bill that was mentioned in State of the State. It's part of the governor's agenda. Interesting, but it's a novel concept. Banning cell phones in schools. We've heard a lot about our reading scores improvement and everything like that, but 8th grade wasn't there. I guess that's kind of maybe related to cell phones. So walk me through what your bill does in terms of banning cell phones in schools.
So I think the biggest thing really I would love to just start with is that we have 2 responsibilities when it comes to educating children or our public school responsibilities, and that's educating them and keeping them safe while they're at school. All right. What we're starting to see and realize is that kids are extremely distracted throughout the day on their cell phones. And there are tons of studies that at this point are starting to really show that it is having a significant impact on learning potential, and it's impacting those numbers. It's impacting their ability to learn and really be career ready or college ready. So what we're really wanting to do is try to remove the distraction. Obviously, we're not taking your kids' phones up at the door when they come in school. I mean, their phones are still going to be with them. But what we're trying to do is really put some good guardrails in place that allow us to maximize their learning potential and set them up for the greatest level of success that we can. And then also keep them safe. There are certainly misuses in our school with our cell phones, particularly, on social media and kids just being kids. But at the end of the day, we have an obligation to also protect them, look out for their mental well-being, and just make sure they're in a great, healthy environment.
Mm-hmm. Well, it can't be the easiest thing in the world to do. I know some schools throughout the state have experimented with banning cell phones in schools one way or the other. What kind of feedback did you use from what those school systems have gone through to inform your bill?
So interestingly, most of the schools that are doing this are more restrictive than the legislation that I have drafted.
Okay.
And I think their outcomes are probably going to be better if I'm honest.
And they can always go further than your legislation.
You absolutely can. What we're doing is setting the floor, and the schools can add to that in any way that they choose to. They can make it stricter. It's just going to have at least these elements included in that. But if there are things that they want to do to go beyond that, they're more than welcome to make it more restrictive. But ultimately, I think this last statistic I saw, and I may not be 100% right, but it's somewhere in there, is about 20 of our school systems already have something. A lot of it already looks like this, or it's a lot more restrictive than what we're doing. But that leaves a lot of our school systems right now that are not doing anything at all. And what we want to do is just kind of have something uniform across the state, set the floor for this is the minimum required, and then allow those local boards and those parents and educators to make the decisions that really work best for them.
Yeah. Well, I do think it's time for something. I was joking with State Superintendent Mackey that, I'm old enough to remember when beepers were the problem, and so
I am too, sadly.
and just think about all the things you can do on a smartphone versus that. While I've got you, you also have legislation dealing with reading and literacy, trying to make sure schools aren't using what's called 3Q learning. What is 3Q learning, and what's your bill do?
So 3Qing is really an old model that has been, it scientifically has been proven to be ineffective at teaching kids to read. What it does is it uses syntax, memory, visual clues to try to figure out what words are, rather than learning how to decode and use phonetics. That's what we called it back in the pager days, right? But now we call it the science of reading. But I will say that it's not going on all around our state, which is great. It's very encouraging. But there are some pockets that we still have some of this going on. And really what we want to do is we want to make sure, again, that we're just preparing kids to be the most successful learners and career and college ready that we possibly can. But it uses a lot of guessing and memory. And
they need to be using phonics.
That's not teaching them how to be a reader. And the science of reading is teaching you how to look at a word and figure out, without anyone helping you, how to decode that word and sound it out and know how to pronounce it. 3Qing doesn't do that. It'll give you, for example, it'll give you a picture, and it'll have a sentence. Maybe it says the brown horse is, in the field, and it'll underline horse. And they'll have a picture, and you're trying to use that picture to figure out what a horse is because you don't actually know how to read the word. And what they'll do is maybe they say donkey, and they'll accept that. Well, that's a complete disservice to that child because that's not the word donkey, it's the word horse. So it's just getting kids basically to guess, to learn how to read by using all kinds of different context clues.
So let's set them up for the future in a proper way by using the science of learning. Yep,
absolutely.
Well, we're out of time, but I'm eager to see these bills move through the process, some important stuff regarding schools. Representative, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Todd. I really appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
APT is Alabama's storyteller. Stories of Alabama history. The arts. Alabama music. Learn more online at aptv.org.
Located in the heart of Alabama's aerospace industry, the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville is dedicated to the U.S. space program. The collection spans the history of spaceflight from early 20th century rocketry pioneer Robert Goddard to present day. The permanent collection includes the Apollo 16 command module and one of the 3 remaining Saturn V rockets. Although the center is well known for its historical collections, it is perhaps better known as the home of the original space camp. This world-class educational program began in 1982 as an effort to encourage children to explore careers in mathematics, science, and technology. Space Camp provides children and adults alike with an opportunity to experience what it would be like to be an astronaut. An historical monument to the U.S. space program, the U.S. Space and Rocket Center continues to not only preserve artifacts and archives, but to inspire future exploration and explorers.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.